Okay, subject-verb agreement is one of the most important skills that you come up with both in your writing and it's on the ACT quite a bit. We're going to focus in the PowerPoint on ACT simply because that's coming up, but that's not the only reason to use it. If you're going into the workforce, you're going to have resumes that you have to write. You're having essays for college entrance exams. You're going to have to write. And one of the things that I've noticed throughout the semester is it's one of the biggest things that you are getting wrong in your writing. So it's really important to pay attention, even though I'm presenting it in the format of ACT. Okay, so when you're looking at a sentence, the first thing you have to understand is what subject verb agreement is. It's where you have your subject, which is who or what the sentence is about, which means it's going to be a noun or a pronoun. That's something you can touch or feel. And then there's going to be an action. Okay. This is, and it can be an action that you can't see like is, but in the example below, you've got Justin rescued. So Justin is who the sentence is about. What did he do? That's an action. He rescued. And then the rest of the sentence just gives us more details on how he rescued it and what he rescued. A kitten from a burning building. That's easy. Like you can do that in your sleep because those are elementary school sentences. Your writing is not really reflecting that because you struggle with writing. And partly it's not doing it because you don't use words like rescued. Your writing is mainly words like is and are. And we're going to talk about that. The problem is that on multiple choice, that's too simple. ACT is going to give you long sentences. And by long, I mean long. Basic rules. And there's a lot of rules, but if you know the basic ones, then the other ones you can not worry about. Okay, the basic ones say that if you have a singular subject, you have to have a singular verb. That simple. Now, that is a little misleading when it comes to collective nouns, but that's going to be a completely different lesson simply because it takes a while to do that. So for right now, we're going to focus on just single subject, single verb, plural subject, plural verb. They have to match. Okay. That's what your goal is when you're looking at these sentences. When you look at the ACT, most of them are going to deal with verb forms in the third person singular. He, she, it, one, or the third person plural, they. Okay. Those verbs are going to end in S. Okay. They, the verb is not going to end in S because it's plural. Okay, so let's look at our sentences. The reality TV star read books, or the reality TV star reads books. When you look at this, who's the sentence about? It's about the star. What is the star doing? Read. Well, star is singular. So according to our rule, your verb has to have an S on it. Okay, so it should be reads. So this one is the correct one. The singers performs bad cover songs, or the singers perform bad cover songs. What's the sentence about? Well, it's about the singers. What are the singers doing? Perform. Okay, so singers is plural. And according to our rule, plural verbs do not end in S. So it's going to be perform. Okay. All right, so that's simple. So let's look at what ACT does to mess you up. And that's the thing with ACT, and it bothers me a great deal because if they wanted to test your knowledge, then they shouldn't try to trick you. And the ACT does put things on there that trick you because they're difficult questions with sentences that are very complex that you rarely see. Okay, so here's what makes them challenging. When you have a subject-verb question on the ACT, the subject is not going to be next to the verb. And as we noticed from the previous one, your subject is here, your verb is here. Subject and then your verb. Well, a majority of your sentences are written like that. You do have some authors who write more complex sentences, but even those complex sentences, you can still pretty easily figure it out because they're not overly complex. ACT uses overly complex ones. The first trap they're going to do is an interrupting phrase. And so they're going to separate your subject from your predicate. Okay? I don't care that you know all the grammatical terms. All you need to know is that your subject is not going to be next to your verb. Okay? So if there is a noun next to your verb, it's probably not your subject. One of the first types of phrases they use is a prepositional phrase. And this is where your phrases are inserted between your subject and your predicate and that show details about the nouns like direction, where, or when. Here are some common prepositional phrases. For, to, in, on. I've seen those a lot on the ACT, but those are all of your most common prepositions. So how do you get the answer correct? Well, the first thing you're going to do is you can write in your ACT book. You are going to cross out either in your mind or actually on paper. I do recommend on paper the phrase. And then you're going to go, okay, well, this is the subject, and you're going to circle your subject. And then figure it out. Does it match? Okay, singular subject, singular verb, plural subject, plural verb. Okay. Most of the time, if you do it that way, you're going to get them right. There is an exception for what's called an inverted sentence. It's a really hard sentence, and we're not going to talk about that today either. But it's not even on every ACT. It's rare that they use it. In the last 5 years, they've used it once, which is why I'm not spending a lot of time on it. Kids don't write using inverted sentences. So it's not something that is as beneficial to you. But if you're looking to make a really, really high score, then you will kind of want to review that one. All right, so here's an example from the ACT a couple years ago. Equipment for both types of kayaks are similar. Kayaks, that's right next to your verb. But what did I say? Your subject is not going to be next to your verb. So even if you don't recognize that this is a prepositional phrase, you remember that Ms. Smith said that the subject is not going to be next to the verb on the ACT because they're going to trick me. So you're going to cross out of kayaks. Okay. So looking at the sentence, what is the whole thing about? Well, it's not about types. Okay. So you're going to cross out that prepositional phrase. That leaves you with equipment. Equipment are similar? No, this is singular, and so you're going to need a singular verb. That leaves you with is and was. Now, I didn't put the whole passage on there, and so what you would have to do, this is where they mess you up, is you have to look at the passage as a whole. Is it in present tense or is it in past tense? And they have to match. And so if I put the whole passage on there, you would see that the correct answer is G, is. All right, non-essential clauses and appositives we've talked about this year. We went over the rules. These are phrases surrounded by 2 commas. Remember that they always have to have 2 commas or 2 dashes. You cannot use 1 comma and 1 dash. It is 2. They have to match. Just remember, everything has to match. So non-essential clauses and appositives have either 2 commas or 2 dashes. My sister, who is very social, was elected class president. So you don't need that. It's great to have, but you don't need it. So it is separated by 2 commas. Our strategy, cross it out. Okay, these sentences about, sister, and sister is singular. So you're going to have your singular verb. Here's another one. Carbonated beverages which is delicious, are not good for your health. This is one of the tricks that the ACT does, is they have put two grammatical mistakes. Well, let's say that they're underlining are, and they're looking for carbonated beverages. Well, carbonated beverages are plural. And so this is correct, are. But when you read it, it sounds off because which is delicious. This is a mistake. But they don't ask you to correct this mistake. They're asking you about this one. And it's throwing you off as you're reading it going, okay, well, maybe it should be singular. No, cross out this phrase. Carbonated beverages are, okay? So this mistake is within your non-essential clause. It should also be are, okay? So just watch out for the fact that they do two mistakes or one mistake in a different spot that will confuse you for the correct answer. Most of them will start with which, who, whose, or where. But they don't always have to. They can do what's called the positive, which just describes your subject. My sister, a very social person. So same thing, you cross out your phrase and that leaves you with my sister was. All right, let's look at this one. My boss, who is extremely kind to his employees, gives helpful advice. We know that it's not going to be right next to your verb for two reasons. One, I said that. Okay, three reasons. Second reason, it's in a prepositional phrase. There's your preposition to. So we're going to cross that out. And then look at this comma right here. You do not put a comma before a verb. You cannot separate a subject from a verb with a comma, ever. Okay? You're not going to do that. So if you see a comma right before that verb, this is not your subject. So you're going to go all the way back until you find the beginning, boss. Boss is singular. So what does the boss do? Gives. All right, here's one from the actual ACT. Dickinson's last 20 years of letters, many over 1,500 words in length, reveals the breadth and depth of, and then of course the rest of the sentence. Remember what I said, dashes and commas are the same thing. So you are not going to have your subject separated by a dash. It's the same thing as separated by a comma. So you know that this is not your subject, okay? Another reason you know that is I said it's not going to be next to your verb. And then another reason is it's in a prepositional phrase. So you got to cross all of this out. So crossing all that out, okay? So that leaves you with Dickinson's last 20 years of letters. You've still got a problem because that's still, okay, what is our subject? Letters comes after of. That's a prepositional phrase. So you've got to cross that one out too. So is the subject about Dickinson or is it about years? Well, when I read the whole sentence, it's really about years, and years is plural. So now you have to go to your verb and go, okay, I need my plural verb. And that leaves be, because be is plural. Okay. And it can't be will and would because she's dead. All right, so that gives you some information on subject-verb agreement, both in what you're doing with how you write, making sure that your subject and your verb match, and how you're going to see that on the ACT.